Hey, everybody. Welcome in. Let's see here. How do I switch? Rich, how do I switch from you to me?
Let me see here.
There
How's
we go.
that?
Thank you. Thank you. Awesome. Hey, everybody. Welcome in. It is so good to see so many familiar faces and some new faces as well. That is always really exciting. Very happy to have you here. Thanks for letting me be a part of your afternoon. I've got a really fun project for you guys today. I hope that you like this one. I put together a really cool little moon pendant for you guys where we're using just some basic wire skills, and hopefully that's going to inspire you, those of you who maybe are new to wire, to maybe venture out and learn some new things with wire. So everything in today's class is fairly easy, but I do know that people kind of get hung up on the moon situation itself. I'll show you when we get to the part where we're shaping the moon, where people kind of get hung up. Even I get hung up on it sometimes. So just know that this class is beginner friendly. However, there is one little section in it that may cause you a little bit of frustration if you're not super confident using wire, but with a little bit of practice, I have no doubt you're going to be doing great. So we're going to put together this moon. I'm using it as a pendant. However, you could use this as a holiday decoration. You could make two of these and turn them into earrings. You can do all kinds of things with them. And as I said, hopefully some of the skills that you learned today, you're going to be able to use in other parts of your jewelry making. So I'm going to get you guys turned around right now. We're going to look at the materials and then we are going to get right into it. I definitely have a ruler for today's project. You don't have to have a ruler, but it is going to help for sure. All right, and I'm going to show you the sample. The sample is a little bit deconstructed. Not everything is part of the sample at the moment, but just to kind of show you where we are going. So we are going to be using some 18 gauge wire to create this moon shape. Then we are going to be using some 24 gauge wire right here to wire wrap some beads onto the moon, and then to create these little loops here at the bottom where we can also hang some dangles. And we're going to be able to do all of that with just a handful of tools. So you just need your regular tools, some sort of mandrel that you can create this curved shape with, and of course a cutter. So let's go ahead and get started with that. So to create your moon shape, you're going to be using 7 inches of the 18 gauge wire, and the 7 inches is going to get you any variety of sizes of moons. So I don't want you to be surprised if your moon is smaller or bigger than mine. It just kind of happens. That's why I wanted to do this as a pendant, because a lot of times when we try to do earrings projects right out the gate before we get confident with wire, we get frustrated because a lot of times it's hard to make two exactly the same until you are really comfortable using wire. So we're going to keep ours a pendant, and whatever size you get is whatever size you're going to go with, which means you may need to alter the amount of beads and the loops, but that's okay. It's all going to be just fine. So I've got my 7-inch piece of wire here, and I actually have 2. And part of the reason that I have 2 is because sometimes the first one doesn't turn out, even after having done this a billion times. But we'll see how it goes. So I'm going to take my 7-inch piece of wire and I'm going to lay that onto my ruler, and I'm going to find the halfway mark, and I'm going to grab some flat nose pliers here. So halfway between is going to be 3.5 inches. I'm going to take my flat nose pliers and I'm going to grab that wire right next to the 3.5 inch mark. So just to one side or the other, it makes no difference which one, but just grab with your pliers. And then you're going to give the wire a bend. Okay, just a nice sharp bend like that. And now we're going to deepen this bend. Use your fingers to push all that together. And then you're going to use those flat nose pliers to deepen that bend even more. So I'm really just squeezing the wire together so that it is lined up side by side as close as possible. Now I'm actually going to do that with the second piece of wire just in case we need it. We might not need it. I might get lucky and get it perfect on the first try, but if not, we'll already have a piece that's ready to go, because again, sometimes this can be a little tricky and sometimes I just don't like the first one. I'm just being honest with you. So I'm going to bend my second piece of wire just so that I have two to choose from, and I have one that I like better. I can use it. Right, deepen that bend. It also helps for you to see this more than once too. So, all right, then just giving the wire good squeeze to put it together. Okay, all right, now I'm going to use my Mandrel tool to create my half moon shape, but use whatever you've got on hand. If you have, your packaging for your wire, even that'll work. Just something that you've got that you can use to get a nice round shape with. But I'm going to be using my Mandrel tool, and I can even tell you, where's my gauge? I can tell you it's kind of an average of what that size is going to be. I believe that is right at about 26 millimeters. So something that's around the 25, 26 millimeter range is what you're looking for. You're just going to put your wire, both pieces, because now it's bent in half. So essentially this is two pieces. You're going to put this up against the mandrel or whatever you're using, and you're going to push it all around to create this nice round shape. Okay. And then if you want to further kind of bend it at the tip, use your pliers to do that. Undo it if you don't like it. But it's wire. Play with it. You're the boss of it. You decide what you want this to look like ultimately. Okay. Now, here is the part where you can decide which direction you want your moon to go. So for the sample, I have my moon going this direction so that the inner curve is facing to the left, or you can do it this direction. It makes absolutely no difference. And if you're going to do earrings with these, you can do one direction and one the other direction. As far as how it ends up looking at the end, it's just going to be opposite. It really doesn't change anything. So you decide which direction you want it to go. So like for this time around, since I have one going this way, I'll make this one go the opposite direction. But what you're going to do is you're going to start to pull the wire. So I'm holding one stationary and I'm just kind of pulling the other one. And that is going to open those two wires up. And you can see that half moon shape starts to take shape. And you can use your pliers again if you need to fix the tip of that. But pulling that apart is going to help you to create the moon, and you can spread it open to make it a thicker moon, or you can make it more narrow. It's up to you, right? This is totally up to you. I like mine to be kind of in the middle. So got mine, I think it to be pretty wide, but not huge. I feel like if it gets really, really wide, then it starts to look less like a moon and more kind of like cheese, which, I mean, if that's your thing, that's cool. But I want mine to look like a moon. So now I'm going to hold these pieces together. You can see I've got a short piece and a long piece here. I'm going to take that long piece that's towards the back, and I'm going to take my pliers and just bend it straight up and down, just like that. And then I'm going to very gently take the other wire and I'm going to hook it around that. And here in the beginning, that's going to be kind of difficult, but hold on to that. You can use your benching nose pliers, your flat nose pliers, whatever you want to hold those wires where they are crisscrossing. Just to hold that stationary. So now you can take the short wire and wrap it around the other wire. And I'm going to do that about 2 times. This wire is kind of short, so I don't really have enough to go around more than twice. And that's fine. All right. So there we go. And it actually ended up being a little bit more narrow than what I wanted, but I'm still okay with it. It still looks like a moon. All right, so now that I have it secure, I've got to do something up here. And this is where I want there to be a loop that I can attach a jump ring or anything else that I want to it. So I'm going to take this wire and I'm going to bend it one direction or the other, makes absolutely no difference. bend it towards you, away from you, to the left, to the right, whatever you need to do. And then you're going to come in with your cutter tool and you're going to trim, leaving yourself about 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 inch of wire, somewhere around there. And then you're going to use your round nose pliers or your stepped bell making tool, because we're going to be using that to create a loop. Now this loop is going to look like a wrapped loop because of the wraps, but it's actually just a simple loop, which is nice because you can now open it and close it, but it has the look of a wrapped loop. All right, so there's our moon. You want to do another one since we have another piece of wire here so that you can see how to do it one more time? We can do that. May as well use it. All right, so again, where that wire is folded in half, I'm just going to push that down with my thumb and I'm going to guide that around, get the shape. Okay. And then again, gonna just take the 2 wires and separate one of them, gently pulling. Okay. And then I'm gonna take the inner wire and bend it straight up and down. And the other wire is gonna hook to it. And then holding those 2 in place, some pliers. I can take the shorter wire and wrap it around the longer wire. This time I had a little bit more wire to do that with. You can see a little bit different this time, a little bit smaller, a little bit more narrow, but pretty similar. Apologize for the dogs, you guys. If you guys have been with me a while, you know, like I have a whole pack, so nothing new there. Okay. So I'm not going to follow the rest of the steps here, but just to finish this the same way if you wanted to. But you can see they were both pretty similar, but one is a little bit smaller. So play around with the wire and figure out which one you like the best and go with that. All right, now we are going to move on to the next step. The next step is we're going to take some of the 24 gauge wire and we're going to use this 24 gauge wire to wire wrap beads to the outer edge of our moon. So for the one that was in the sample, I was able to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 beads. I don't know that I'll have enough to get 8. There may be just enough for 7. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Probably the most important thing is that I want to have 5 loops at the bottom. Okay, so I want to be sure that I have enough room for that. So we're going to start at the top and we are going to take our 30 inches of 24 gauge wire. And we are going to anchor that to the top up here with just a couple of wire wraps. So let's see, should we turn it this direction? Might be easier to go this way. I'm going to turn mine over. I actually have the back facing me. And it really doesn't make any difference, but just to anchor my wire. Anchor that with about 3 wire wraps or 2. It's fine, whatever works for you. And then I'm going to slide that over as close to that loop on the top as possible. Okay. And now I've turned this back over facing the correct direction. I just had it facing away from me to anchor the wire. It just seems like it's just a little bit easier. So, okay. So now what we're going to do is we are going to take a bead and we are going to thread that on to the end of that 24 gauge wire. Okay, I'm using these really beautiful faceted round crystals. We're going to drop this down. And what I want is for that bead to sit right on the edge of that moon. Okay. And I'm going to hold that in place, and then I'm going to bend the wire to the back of the bead. And then I'm going to bring the wire through the moon to wire wrap it on. And you can see I've turned this around in my hand, and that's just part of wire wrapping. Whatever is most comfortable for you. You need to hold this upside down if you want to turn it around and work on the back. It's whatever works for you. Okay, so I've got my moon upside down, and I'll probably proceed to go all the way around with the moon upside down, and then we'll turn it right side up when we get all the beads added on. But you can see I've wire wrapped 2 times to lock that bead in place. And then I'm going to bring that wire around for what would be wire wrap number 3. And I'm going to add another bead. How did I end up? Sorry, you guys, taking a look at what I've done here, because I wire wrapped on the same side. Let me undo this. Let me show you. I knew there was something off just a little bit. So you want to follow the natural path of the wire, which I did not do. Got a little excited, so let me show you. Okay, so when you add a bead to the wire, right, you want to follow the natural path of the wire. So if your wire is going clockwise or your wire is going counterclockwise, depending on how you're doing things, you want to be sure that you continue that path, right? So my wire is going clockwise. I added my bead, and I want to continue going clockwise around the component. So you can see how the wire is coming from underneath, and then we're going around. So see how it's coming up over the front. I added the bead, now it's going behind. So don't accidentally, like I did because I had this upside down and I was chatting with you, don't accidentally wire wrap on the same side that you started on. Does that make sense? So I'll show you again, just so that you don't get confused. Okay. Okay. So you'll notice we're coming around clockwise. We're coming through the inside of our moon here, and now our wire is going up this direction. So when we add the next bead, okay, we bring that bead down here up against the outer edge. Now we bend the wire down the back of the bead, and we want to follow that path of the wire, right? So just like the bead was not there, don't all of a sudden come this direction. Don't change directions. Go around your component exactly the same. Okay, wire wrap twice, and then up again. Okay, now we're going to add another bead. Same thing, hold the bead, bend the wire down the back, take your wire through the center of the moon, wrap around 2 times to anchor it, and then when you come up for wire wrap number 3, you're going to add another bead. Okay. Bend the wire down the back of the bead, wrapping around the component. Okay, coming up for our 3rd wrap. Ready to add a bead. Also, you may notice that as you are working, because even though we're wire wrapped and technically anchored, it doesn't mean that this is not going to move on you. You can see I can take this entire section and slide it around. That's totally fine, because if it slides out of place, you can just gently slide it right back to where it needs to be. and it's not going to hurt anything. Now at the end, when the whole side is filled up with our beads and our loops, then there won't be any more room to slide around, so that won't be a problem. But right now I'm not super worried about it. You can also take your beads and your wire wraps and you can kind of squish them together. So if you see that even though you've got the wire wraps correct in between there, it's the same number of wire wraps in between, but the beads are still kind of coming apart. There's space in between there. Push them together. So you can just take your fingernails, you can take your tools and just kind of slide them over and squish them closer together. Okay, so picking up another bead. Okay, we've got that in place. Bend the wire. And then coming through the center of the moon. And we're going around. So we're wrapping twice. Coming up for the third wrap. You can see we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 beads. Need to add 3 more to at least make it match the one that we had. And I think I have room. Okay. Hold that bead in place, take a wire down the back, come through the middle of the moon. Make sure that when you're wire wrapping, because 30 inches of wire is a lot, that you don't get any kinks in your wire. And if you notice them starting to happen, go ahead and take care of them before it gets really sharp and deep in that wire. The deeper the kink or the bend in the wire, number one, the harder it is to smooth it back out. But number two, it can create a really weak spot in your wire, and you don't want your wire to break. So definitely try to keep that from happening as you're working. I love this comment section. Oh, goodness. Don't let your wire kink on you, that's for sure. All right, so I've got 2 more beads to add, and then we're going to switch things up a little bit. Take that through the middle. It's funny, when we started this one, I was going to try to do this in the opposite direction of my sample, and it didn't work out that way. It just kind of goes to show that, like, you get comfortable in wire wrapping and working in a certain direction, and best laid plans don't always. It's funny because I had totally different intentions here and ended up making exactly what I made for the sample, because that's just what's comfortable for me. So it's still beautiful and it's fine. It matches the sample. I'm not mad about it, but it's funny because that was not my intention. And I'll show you the difference here in just a second. So let me wire wrap this last bead, and I'll show you why it is that this is the back, but it's going to end up being the front. So let me get this wire wrapped and I'll show you. Is you're going to notice there are 2 different sides to this, and both sides look great, but I am partial to one side over the other, and it really just kind of depends on the look that you're going for. Okay, so I have all of my beads, right? I have 8 beads on here, which is exactly how many I wanted. And then I have enough room for my loops down here at the bottom. Don't cut your wire because we're going to use the same piece of wire to create those loops. However, I do want to show you the difference between the front and the back. So this originally started out as the back of this piece. And I know that because number one, I had it going this direction to start with. And number two, because I can see where I cut the wire where I was wrapping around in the beginning. So this is supposed to be the back. However, if I flip this over, you will notice the wire, the little wire spokes, right? And for me, just personally, I like the wire spokes to go on the back. And I originally thought that's what I was doing. Turns out that when muscle memory takes over, that's not exactly how this worked out for me. So so I'm going to make this the front because I just want the crystals to be there. I don't want to see the wire spokes. However, it's still really beautiful. I think either way, it looks really cool. So it's up to you. If you want this to be the front with the wire spokes where you can see where the wire is coming between the beads, that's totally fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's a beautiful look as well. So it's really just up to you. It's whatever you want it to be. But I want mine to be just the crystals. So I'm going to go ahead and come up here and I'm going to trim off. And we're just going to keep going here. Okay. And you can see it's the same with this one too. There's a clear difference between one side of the or the other. So it's really just up to you as to what you like. Okay. All right, so now we need to make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 little loops here. And in order to make those little loops, we're going to continue to wire wrap, but this time instead of adding a bead, we're going to wire wrap around a tool. We're not going to change anything though. Okay, so the wire wrapping continues exactly the same. We're going in the same clockwise fashion and we are going to follow that natural path. So even when we bring in a tool or a mandrel to wrap around to guide our wire, we still want to be sure that we're coming from the inside of the moon and going around, right? So don't change that up, even with bringing in a tool. So I'm going to bring in my stepped bell making pliers here. You can use whatever you want to. If you want to use something different that is a mandrel, go for it. But I'm going to be using the smaller mandrel. And I'm gonna have to lift you guys up a little bit as well, just so that I have enough room for the tool underneath here so you can see everything that I'm doing. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm going to grab the moon with the tool. Now, hopefully you can see that pretty well. I'm holding it so that the smallest mandrel, which is the one that I'm going to use as my guide, is on the outer edge, just like the beads, right? And I'm going to take that wire and I'm going to guide it around the edge of that and through the center, just like normal. Now it's a little tricky because I'm holding the tool with one hand, and so I'm just having to use my one free hand here to wrap around, but we're doing exactly the same thing. So we're wrapping around the tool and then we're wire wrapping twice. And then we're coming up for wire wrap number 3, just like if we were going to add a bead, but instead of adding a bead, we're going to take this off of the tool. You can see where that little loop is. And we're going to place the tool back onto the component right up next to the wire wraps, guide the wire around. We're going to the back of the component up through the center of our moon. Pull that wire through, which is kind of tricky. Okay. Hold on tight with your tool there. Taking the wire through the center. Okay, so that's the second time around. And now if you need to let go for that third time around, you can. Now you've pretty much ensured that that little loop is the size and the shape that you want it to be. Okay. And then just like with the beads, if you need to scooch these over a little bit, come push them over just a little bit. Okay. So there's 2 and we have a total of 5. So we need to do 3 more of those. So same thing again, grabbing the moon with our tool, guiding the wire around the edge of the tool. I think I cut more than 30 inches of wire here. I need to trim some of this off. Okay. Definitely going to trim a little bit. Got a few inches off that just to make this a little bit easier to work with. That's a lot of wire. Don't want to trim too much though, because you don't want to run out. You definitely don't want to add wire at this point. You're right at the end. So, okay. Moving over, down. Notice how I'm kind of navigating around the tool and coming towards the more open area of the moon, because right here we're getting really kind of small in the space. The opening is not really big. So instead of trying to push that wire through, I'm taking it where it's easier and then bringing it back over here where I need it. So I'm taking it through over here, nice and open, and then bringing it back over here. Okay. All right, we're going to do one more. Just barely enough room to get your tool in there. And you can see the little opening here is very, very small. And unfortunately, now the tool is in the way. So I have no choice but to go through that little space. And that's fine. That's fine. It's just once. Twice. And then I'm going to take this off to make life a little bit easier to get that last wire wrap. All right. So I'm going to actually do another wire wrap just for good measure. And then I'm going to trim this off. And then we are going to kind of adjust the placement of everything. So take this to the back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops, just double checking my work, trimming off. Okay, now I'm going to very gently kind of scooch everything over. I can widen up the spaces in between my beads if I want to, just to fill up all of the space. Okay. All right. So I have my beads on the outside edge, and then the beads stop, and I have my loops at the bottom, just like with my sample. Sample's a little bit smaller, but it's still exactly the same. Okay. And now we are ready to add some dangles to this, because that's what these little loops are for. However, if you don't want to do the dangle part of this, you don't have to. You can go all the way around this moon with the beads and forget the dangles and just leave that off if you want to. It's totally up to you, right? This is your piece. You get to decide what you want it to look like. If you don't want 5 loops here, just do 2, just do 3, or do just 1 right at the end and hang a pretty teardrop or something from there. You can be the one that decides all of that. I'm just giving you an example here. All right, so I'm going to set these to the side, and we're going to look at doing some simple loops to create some dangles for this. So we have 5 little loops, which means that we want to create 5 little dangles. And for me, I like to do where it's kind of like it tears down into a long section, gets shorter as it goes up. So my longest section here, I've already done for you. We're going to do one of these together, but I used a 6mm bicone and 3 4mm bicones. These are all on eye pins. Our bottom bead is on a head pin, and we're just using simple loops. And then going from the outwards, like going from the center outwards, they're going to decrease by 1 bicone. Okay. So the next one over is going to have 2 of the 4mm bicones and a 6mm bicone at the bottom. And I have 2 of those. And then on the outer edge, it is going to be 1 6mm bicone and 1 4mm bicone. Now we're going to do that together so I can show you. Okay, so we're going to take a head pin, and I'm going to take our largest bicone and thread that onto a head pin. Okay. Then you're going to come in with your chain nose pliers. You're going to grab that wire right where it is exiting the top of that bead. And you want to hold on to that bead with your fingers. You're going to take that wire and you're going to bend it right where it is exiting the bead. And then you're going to come in with your cutter tool and you're going to trim off, leaving yourself about 1/4 of an inch of wire. And then you're going to use your round nose pliers or your stepped bell making pliers, whatever you're more comfortable using. You're going to grab that wire and you're going to roll that wire back towards the bead, back towards your hand to create a closed little loop. And guys, if your simple loops don't look like loops, they look more like eggs, that's totally fine. Once you get this entire piece put together, nobody is going to notice what those loops look like. The most important part is that they're closed. So that way nothing sneaks out of them. Okay. So you want to be sure it's just like a jump ring, that the loop is nice and closed. You don't have to worry about any of that. But in this kind of design, it doesn't matter if those loops are not absolutely perfect, because people are not going to notice that. What they're going to notice is the sparkle. They're going to see all of this beautiful crystal and all of the shimmer and all of the movement. They're not going to be looking at these individual loops. Now, you definitely want to practice. I'm not telling you that, just give up. You're never going to get a round loop. That's not what I'm saying. You definitely want to practice, because the more you practice these, the better they're going to become and the more like a loop they are going to become. But even then, every now and then you're going to have a few that just don't look all that great. That's okay, as long as they're closed. That's all that matters. All right, now to link something to that, we're going to use an eye pin. So for the eye pin, I'm going to bring that in and I'm going to twist the eye on that open, just like I would a jump ring. And I'm going to hook that onto the loop that we just created. And then I'm going to use my pliers and I'm going to twist to close that back. Okay. So again, making sure you get a good closure on that. Now I'm going to thread a 4mm jump ring on to that, and I'm going to do another simple loop. So I'm going to grab the wire right where it is exiting the bead, bend the wire, come in with my cutter tool, trim off, leaving myself about 1/4 of an inch of wire. Looks like a little bit more than 1/4, so trim a little bit more of that, and then use your round nose pliers, grab the wire, roll back to close your loop. And you can see that one's not the most perfect loop ever, but you know what? It's closed and that's all that matters to me. So even if it's a little funny shaped, I'm okay with it. Okay. So that's going to be your outer edges, is a 4mm bicone and a 6mm bicone. So then as you work your way inwards, the next one that you make, you're going to add a 4mm bicone to it. The one in the center is going to have 3. Okay. All right. Now we're going to add these to our design. And to do that, you're going to open each one of those simple loops at the top. So instead of using a jump ring here, I'm just going to hold on and I'm going to twist to open that. I'm going to thread that on to that bottom loop. I'm going to twist to close. And there's one of my dangles. Okay, the next one over has an extra bicone. So same thing, twist to open, thread it onto the next loop. Use your pliers, twist to close. One in the middle is the longest with 3 of the 4mm bicones. Twist to open, thread that on, twist to close. Okay, then we're going up again, so we're decreasing by 1 of the 4mm bicones. Onto the next loop. Twist to close. And this is the last one. And twist to close. And there you go. How pretty is that? It was really, really beautiful. You have so much sparkle here. Now it's up to you to decide what you want to do with this. So put a jump ring on it, thread it onto a piece of chain, thread it onto a piece of ribbon, attach it to a Christmas tree hook, hang it on your tree, put it wherever you want it to go, put it on a necklace, make a second one, turn them into earrings, whatever you want. I'm going to thread this one onto a piece of chain just so that we can see what it looks like while it is hanging. And I will grab a bust here so that I can show that to you before we go. I hope that you guys have enjoyed today's project. Not a lot of hard wire things going on here, just some simple wire wrapping, some simple loops, but the results are really, really beautiful. That's my favorite kind of jewelry to make, are the ones where the results are what matters. It's not about showing off every skill or technique that you know. It's just about putting some beautiful beads together, making something cool with wire, and being really proud of your finished results. So, all right, guys, I'm going to turn you around. It's actually a pretty short piece of chain here. I wonder if I've got anything a little bit longer. Better example for hanging. Yeah, this looks to be a little bit longer. Let me swap this out, and then I'm going to turn you around and we'll take a look at this. I'll hold it up on a necklace bust so you can see. All right. I think this would look really pretty on like an organza ribbon. Something just kind of ethereal looking. I think it would be really pretty. All right, let me turn you around. Okay. And I'll hold this up for you. Now my chain is still a little short, but you get the idea. You can see how that's going to hang. And it's going to hang slightly tilted, just like a moon. It's not going to be straight one direction or the other. Which I think makes it look even more realistic moon-wise. So, I mean, I hope that you really, really like this. And again, there's so many different options here. You can go all the way around with the beads. Don't have to do the dangles. You can do just one dangle. So switch this up, change it around. You could even wire wrap some crazy fun beads inside the middle of that moon to make it more just make it full of beads and instead of it being open like that. So get creative, come up with something fun, post it so everybody else can see it. I hope you guys have enjoyed. Thank you so, so much for letting me be a part of your beadie journey. I will be back with you again very, very soon with another fun project. In the meantime, guys, go make something pretty and I will see you very, very soon. Bye, guys.